couple of things we need to go over here on the back. All right, so our next time to meet is going to be March 2nd, so just a month from today. And then this next one is a thing that is important. I wish we didn't have to do this, but we need to move the Kingdom Life School to April 13th instead of April 6th. So we've had these basically on the first Saturday of each month. On the 4th through the 6th will be the Pearls of Hope Conference down in Ashland, which I have been a part of the speaking team as one of the anchor speakers, and so they invited me to join them again, which I would like to do. I'm planning to do, but that means that we have to bump this. So if we bump it to the 13th, this space is available, so we'll still do it here. If we bump it to the 13th, is there anyone that conflicts with or it takes you out as far as you know at this point? Okay, Charlene, it will you. All right. And Terry?
It's perfect.
Oh, it's okay? All right.
Sorry, that means we get to go to Pearls of Hope. Exactly. That's what
Well, yes, we do get to go. We do get to go to Pearls of Hope. So, so that is kind of part of the piece here. And then I have on there that any Kingdom Life School participant who's planning to attend Pearls of Hope is welcome to speak with me about a discount if this is, if it's hard to do like both things in the same month or whatever. So I'm willing to talk with you about that if there's a need along those lines. And let's see, was there something else about that? So how many of you will likely go to Pearls of Hope now? I mean, some were already probably, and okay, good. I was really glad that this space is available, so we've got that covered. And then here's how the remaining modules will lay out. There really hasn't been any change since I gave this to you last month, but we'll do Court of Heaven next month in March, and then for individuals, and then Court of Heaven for organizations, businesses, nation in April. And then in May, that one is still a little bit up in the air because there's a couple of demonstrations that I still might want to kind of throw into May that will be like just kind of bringing closure or tying up loose ends, that kind of thing. So that material there in Module 8 is going to be, mostly about just finishing up things that don't feel finished. Okay, so we have that as the last one. Let's see. Any questions, comments about any of that last page of announcements? Homework basically coming up is the Court of Heaven, operating in the courts of heaven. And is there anyone who doesn't have that book, this book right here? Anybody who doesn't have this yet? Operating in the Courts of Heaven. This is the book for next month, and this is our last book for Kingdom Life School. You're not sure. I can see it on your face. You're not sure.
Did you have those out last month?
I did.
Okay.
Okay.
I can recognize it, but most of the Robert Henderson has YouTube videos that are great that really follow along with the book. So depending on how you learn, or maybe you want to just solidify what you're reading, watching, it's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. That is a very good word. So Robert Henderson, YouTube videos. All right. Some of them are operating in the courts of heaven. Did anyone get the DVD set from up here that's Robert Henderson? I don't see it right now. Okay, good. So that will be available again, maybe to for somebody else. Who all has taken that one? That one's gone out almost every time, I think. Anyway, if there's a DVD set, a study guide that we're not going to go over specifically, but some of the things that are online are the precursor that he taught before he got to the point of putting it all in the actual study. So I watched a webinar with a woman named Beverly Watkins. Anybody familiar with her? I think that she is one of the South African women. If you watch Robert Henderson talk about his early encounters about Court of Heaven, he was over in South Africa, And part of what happened there was some women who ministered to him about his bloodline and some things in his generational line. And then things really broke open for them in several ways. So now she is doing an online class, and they had about 5,000 people sign up for the webinar to find out about the class. So her specific target is generational cleansing in the court of heaven. So I was just glad to see that that's going, just continues to expand in terms of how that's being received in the overall Christian community. Beverly Watkins. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. You ever feel like the Lord tells you to talk about something and you don't want to talk about it when it's all said and done? Like, do I really have to? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I consider myself a forerunner, basically, all right? So I feel like for some things, like I've been cleansing generational bloodlines since I started RTF in 2009. All right, we didn't do them in the court of heaven originally, but we started cleansing bloodlines in 2009. So now we're 20 years later, and it's really coming to the forefront. This is really important. Now let's do it in the court of heaven because it's more efficient, which is of course what we did when we started the school to do it. All right. So, but in that place of forerunning, I'll just use that term. I go places that other people oftentimes don't go, and it sometimes puts me in a position to know things that other people don't want to know, and it puts me in a position to know things that I don't want to know, okay? I didn't have any concept, I would say early in my life, I would not have had any concept that this would be where the Lord would take me or what he would have me do, all right? So with all of that disclaimer, I feel like the thing that he wants me to talk about or to share with you guys for a little bit, it will probably come around when we're ready to do Court of Heaven in 2 months. When we're ready to do it think about it at organizational, national level, community level, that kind of thing. So I can kind of, in some ways, think about like tying it back into the school with regard to that. So if I were to ask you, if you understand the concept of being red-pilled, a blue pill and a red pill, and that's from the movie The Matrix. You can have the blue pill or the red pill. And if you understood the concept of being red-pilled, how many of you would know what I was talking about? Okay. All right. And then I'll ask this even, how many of you would know what I was talking about to be red-pilled in today's culture in the United States? Anybody? Okay. All right, just a few. Okay. So I want you to write down a couple of websites. And so one website that I want you to write down is called theprayingmedic.com. Okay? All right? How many of you know about the Praying Medic? Okay.
This kind of praying?
Yes, praying medic, PRAYING medic, MEDIC.com. Okay. So in the movie The Matrix, the red pill, the blue pill is for people who are living the narrative that is put forward that everyone believes is true. All right? If you've heard me talk about narratives that have higher percentages of truth than other narratives, we could live according to a narrative and we could pray according to a narrative, and we might not know that our narrative actually doesn't have a very high percentage of truth when God looks at the situation. So we understand certain things going on, we understand them a certain way, we have this particular narrative that we live in, but we don't know that that narrative isn't actually as true as we think it is, okay? So in The Matrix, the blue pill is for people who are living in a narrative that they think is real but really isn't, it doesn't have a very high percentage of truth in it. The blue pill doesn't. But in some ways, it's the more comfortable narrative because everybody's used to it. Okay? And so there are some people in the Matrix who aren't satisfied with the blue pill. They're not satisfied with the narrative that they're living in. They have some sense that there must be more or something must be wrong. And those people come to the attention of people who actually have higher narratives, truth. They have narratives with higher levels of truth. And so when those people come to the attention of people who have higher truth in their narratives, they are offered a red pill. Would you like to have the red pill? Because it will change almost everything you believe, but what you believe isn't really as true as you think it is. And if you take the red pill, you can come over here into this other arena. It has a higher percentage of truth, but it's not very comfortable. And it's surely not very comfortable because you have to sort of let lots of things process or fall away. Okay? All right. So the concept or the idea of red pill is very common in certain narratives of things that are going on the national scene at this point. All right? And so that terminology of people are being red pilled now, or people are choosing to take the red pill. It means I'm choosing to know a narrative with a higher percentage of truth than anything I have previously known, and it's going to cost me, but I'd rather know the truth. Yes. Okay? So back in November of 2017, a phenomenon, I will say, a situation began in the internet world where a person or a group of people began to present information that was, in essence, bringing a red pill to the culture. All right? So the praying medic began following that narrative in late 2017, and he began posting explanations of what was going on in that narrative. Okay? So here's the term. Someone who presented themselves by this term, Q-Anon, okay? Q-Anonymous, someone who presented themselves by that term, showed up on some internet boards talking about things, narratives in the culture that were different from what had been historically believed or what we might think was going on really in the culture, especially if we followed mainstream media. Okay? So I am encouraging you, because I think the Lord told me to do it, I am encouraging you to look at the prayingmedic.com's podcast on his website. Now, among those who are attempting to red pill, which by that I mean those who are attempting to present a narrative with a higher percentage of truth than is accepted in the culture, among those, I believe the praying medic is one of the strongest voices, and he's one of the most intelligent voices, and he's one of the most thorough with his research, and he has lots of podcasts. But those people who are attempting to bring this kind of information are actually being censored from platforms. So they're getting censored on YouTube. They're getting what's called shadow banned. They might have 600,000 followers one day, and the next day they only have 400,000 followers. And so things are happening within their overall system. And so you can find Praying Medic on YouTube, but he has moved everything over to his own website, as have many of these who are bringing information that is talking about the culture in ways that aren't mainstream. Everybody with me? Okay, how many of you know a little bit more now that I've given you that much when I talk about being red-pilled and kind of, okay, a little bit. Okay. So, for the way that it partially plays into what we do here, is that when we do Court of Heaven on behalf of individuals, and when we do Court of Heaven on behalf of businesses, organizations, and the such, we can pray according to the narrative that we are kind of used to. We could, and we do this all the time, we pray and ask God to do things according to the narrative we understand. But if the narrative we understand doesn't really have a very high percentage of truth, then what happens to our prayers? A lot of the time we think that God just doesn't listen to us, or we get upset with him because he doesn't do what we're asking. And we're having difficulty giving him prayers that he actually can answer because he knows all the rest that's going on here, and we're just praying from one little sliver that's not enough of the whole picture. All right? So when we get ready to go into the Court of Heaven on these other things, whether we do it as a class or whether you move toward this, I want to encourage you to have a practice of seeking out the narratives with the highest level of truth. That means when God looks at a situation, what does he see? All right? What is his truth when he looks at that? Seek out the narratives with the highest percentage of truth, and then pray from those narratives. All right? So recently, I was a part of a team that did a Court of Heaven, that did some Court of Heaven work for the safety of the lives of people who are working for righteousness within our country right now. Because they're, including President Trump, their lives are in danger, all right? But we don't really hear that in many of the narratives of the culture. But in some of the other narratives, there are some of the stories of some of the assassination attempts, some of the people who get taken out after they have committed to be witnesses for things. And so we're, in that Court of Heaven, we went to pray from the highest level of truth that we knew, which was people are getting killed. They're getting taken out so that things won't be exposed. And there won't be justice brought, okay? So it will matter for us when we get to that point. I'm sending you the praying medic because he's the safest one to send you to, okay? Because much of the information is disturbing. And we as believers can be really disturbed by the information. And I'm asking you to go slow if you're bothered or disturbed. And I'm asking you to let the Lord direct you about what you come into information about, and then process with him what really is his perspective and his truth. Okay? Not everything that we'll read or hear from the praying man. I believe his integrity is impeccable personally. But there are always going to be mistakes or things that, as they unfold, they change, that kind of thing. So I'm not asking you to believe everything you hear, but I'm asking you to begin to look and research if you haven't already done that. Okay? So the way that I will say that I was first red-pilled in 2006. Okay? And I was red-pilled around, I didn't know this was a term. I wanted to coin this term. I didn't know it had been around for a long time. But we looked it up online last night. I was red-pilled around the medical industrial complex. Okay? We all hear about, well, maybe we do, but in some of these red pill places, we hear about the military industrial complex. But I was red-pilled around the medical industrial complex. All right? So when I had a health crisis in 2006, and I'd watched a number of other women in my family walk out something that I didn't want to walk out, and I went looking for something different, in the process of that, I found out that things were brought into the allopathic medical arena in our nation back in 1920 in order to move things a certain way, and ever since then they have gone that way. And basically it is the medical industrial complex that has risen up around this allopathic culture, and we've been blue-pilled in major ways, okay? So there is an opportunity to be red-pilled in there, but it's scary, and it's difficult, and it's disturbing. But that was my first red pill, true red pill, was walking that out at the beginning of 2006. So now and that started it for me, because when I had a chiropractor tell me I needed to research, and this was what he sent me to. He sent me to a book called Murder by Injection. And he told me that I needed to research murder by injection, which was written in the 1970s or 80s. And there was a chapter in there about what was done in the 1920s to set the nation on the path that we have been on, related to allopathic reigning supreme ever since then. That book is like public domain on the internet, I think. But anyway, that was the first place. Well, then when you start to go down that rabbit hole, as they say, then there are all kinds of other rabbit holes that come into play, because the central banking system comes into it, the military industrial complex comes into it, all of the government comes into it, the intelligence agencies, all these different places, okay? So in what I'm sending you to with the Praying Medic, there will be various aspects of that, and that's sufficient. If you get on this and then the Lord takes you to other things, that's fine. But we're going to continue to see things over the coming 20 years, probably, the unfolding of this. And we have an opportunity to pray into what God is doing here. And we need to pray into what God is doing here, because we have to keep the people alive who are moving us in the right direction. Okay? All right. So out of pursuing that, then I won't say out of pursuing that. I'm not sure that that's true. I came across a little while ago a woman named Natalie Morris. And she has a website called quantumcommand.net. quantumcommand.net. And she has a YouTube channel that's Quantum Command.
Is it demand or
Command. Quantum Command.
Her last name is Warren?
No, it's Morris. Natalie Morris. Quantum Command. Okay, so I listened to her. I was listening to a friend of mine on a podcast. She was a guest for someone else's podcast. And up from that podcast, when my friend finished, was a podcast that this same person had done with Natalie. And that's how I first found her. And I am now in the Quantum Command University myself, which is an online class. I'm in year one, just like you guys are in year one. But I'm in year one with Quantum Command University. And there's a year two. And I'm headed that direction too next year. And I want you to know about this, because this touches a physical element that it would be good for you to know about. And then there's also an emotional component that is folded into what Natalie is dealing with and what she presents. And at some point, that emotional component is going to be important to what we do in healing prayer, okay? Not that we'll be doing what she's doing, but I've watched people who we've done every form of healing prayer, counseling, every deliverance, everything that we new to do to try and help someone get free, and they still weren't free. And Natalie has discovered a possibility why that might be happening. Okay? So now I'm in Quantum Command University. It takes a whole year to even begin to actually learn to do what she's doing effectively. And then it takes a second year to get proficient at it. And so I'm headed down that trail now. And you guys are going to take over what I'm doing, because I'm going to take over I'm not going to take over some things, but I'm going to incorporate some of the things that Natalie is doing, because we still have hard cases of people who aren't getting free. Okay? Now this is an additional, I don't want to say additional, this is an extension of disturbing. Okay? When you listen to this information, it's an extension of disturbing. So I'm recommending that for whatever you have time for, as much as you have time for, on her Quantum Command YouTube, I'm recommending that first of all you listen to her podcast that's called The Quantum Red Pill. The Quantum Red Pill. And then secondly, I'm going to give you 4. Secondly, I would encourage you to listen in this order. Then listen to, why do we need the quantum to get well? Why do we need the quantum to get well? So first of all, the quantum red pill, then why do we need the quantum to get well? And then building the matrix, part 1. Building the Matrix Part 2, and she hasn't released it yet, but there will be a Part 3. She has a few other podcasts or recorded Zoom calls on her YouTube channel, and a couple of them are testimonies of people who were ill and nothing worked. They tried everything. And then they finally got to her, and they were able to get some breakthrough. Okay? So there's some testimonies. There's one that is Aaron and Drew's testimony. That one is just amazing what Aaron went through, what she went through before they finally got some relief. And then otherwise, she has some actual calls on there of her doing her work. I think there's at least one where you can kind of get an idea of sort of what it looks like in her call. Yes, ma'am?
Are these all on YouTube?
These are all on YouTube for now. I mean, I don't think she has been shadow banned or messed with at this
You
point.
don't have to sign up to work.
No. You can just go to Quantum Command, and these are all right there on her list. She doesn't have a lot, and she's just started releasing again. She's got like maybe 10, 12. And so I'm directing you to 5 of the 12 that she has on there. And then if you want to look at the extras there, you can. Okay, so my husband has had a diagnosis for the last 4 years that we have been told would take him to the need for a bone marrow transplant. And there were progressive treatments, and they would each eventually not work, and then there would have to be this in the medical paradigm. That's where it would go, and that's what was required. He was getting close. The other things were not working. And at this point, he is, in the medical paradigm, expected to have a bone marrow transplant in early June. We are still hopeful that he will be able to avoid that. Okay? And we're doing a combination of Quantum Command, integration of internal parts that, sometimes we can actually partner with illness because it meets some kind of need. And especially if we learned that illness had a benefit when we were children, then some part of us could still be partnering with that, while every other part of us is trying not to be sick and trying to get well. So we're doing some internal work to see if there's anything left for him that might be partnering with the illness. We're doing quantum command work so that anything that is in his body from what Natalie has discovered can be quantumly released and not affect him. And I know you don't know what that means. You won't know until you listen, but you'll start to get a feel for it. We went down to Bethel last weekend, and he was prayed for there. And we are walking out this with the expectation and the hope that come June, we'll get to make all of the changes that we want to make in June. We just won't have to have the bone marrow transplant. If it requires like us living in Portland for 120 days, it requires full-time care for 24/7 over the course of a certain amount of time, and major life transitions, as you can imagine, as any kind of transplant actually does. So we believe that what we have found in quantum command explains some of the things that he has had to deal with, and what we need to have happen is we need his body to begin to increase his hemoglobin count without medical intervention. So without having to have blood transfusions or other things, we need his counts to begin to go up. We feel like when that happens without medical intervention, then we will have some indication that we are fully moving in the right direction, and it's not just that we're believing we're walking in obedience as God has shown us all these various things, but he's actually, bringing us to the result that we're looking for. Questions?
Is that the Q in QAnon?
Quantum command is not the Q in QAnon, okay? So QAnon, Q is the highest level